Hello, everyone. This is our third episode in our coverage of the recent Belgium bombing as another synthetic terror event carried out under Operation Gladio B. Every action starts a chain reaction, and these chains of events are intertwined with each other as a fabric. In our current topic, the bombing in Belgium constitutes action. The subsequent reactions, decisions, and actions form a chain reaction. Only when we begin viewing the chains of events that are intertwined with each other as a fabric in this synthetic terrorism case, we begin to truly comprehend the whole picture. In this episode, we'll begin looking at reactions, events, and actions that are taking place since the execution of this recent plot, and the ones that took place before that. We'll look at objectives that are being pursued and pushed, and who benefits from it all. Just a couple of days after tipping the Belgium domino tile, aka the bombings in Brussels, former minister, president of the Brussels region, took the podium with a strong call to action, basically trying to kick the next intended domino tile. There was no screening at the entrance to airports. This is something which all European airports will have to consider for the future. Also, I think that the subway stations must be equipped with detectors of metals, of explosives, etc. This was probably a shortcoming, but this is extremely expensive to establish. Expensive indeed. Mucho dinero for certain companies, eh? And here comes the real intended message and move. Here's what this man said during his interview with RT. We should have, of course, some kind of European FBI. That's what we should establish. To have a single police and intelligence organization working for the whole of the European Union. That's what we should have. We don't have that today. But I can tell you that the bilateral collaboration between the different member states of the EU are tightening. Now they are pushing a combination of NSA, FBI, CIA style massive intelligence surveillance police organization to police the entire EU. To sum it up, more detector gadgets are needed, more CCTVs, more metal detectors. There goes billions of dollars for some to be gained. An enormous homeland motherland EU intelligence agency and communication interceptor needs to be established. There comes tens of thousands of jobs for bankrupt and unemployed Europe. Hooray to terrorism. Austerity solved, eh? There comes NSA-like massive Stasi surveillance operation. You get the gist, right? Now let's check our PBS NewsHour show interviewing Rick Nelson of Crossmatch Technologies, a former naval officer who served at the National Security Council and the National Counterterrorism Center, on Belgium bombing. One of the things this is going to force in the European Union and beyond is the fact that these nations are going to have to share information more readily than they have in the past. There has been some hesitation by certain countries to share intelligence information throughout the EU. I think France started the dialogue moving forward, thanks to Paris terror attacks. So what's left unsaid here? We want EU to emulate USA model. Do what NSA does, trillions of dollars, tens of thousands of employees and contractors, 24/7 warrantless surveillance. Share everything with other police, law enforcement, and intelligence agencies, and of course, private contract mercenaries. Mucho dinero, mucho synthetic employment creation. Yes? Never mind these perpetrators had already been detected, were already on wanted lists, multiple, were already on multiple terror watch lists. No, sir. Let's omit all that part, okay? James Lewis, a senior fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, said that recent attacks, such as those in Paris, had spurred European governments, which already function with fewer checks than the United States does, to push for new monitoring powers. Lewis, who supports increased surveillance activities, said that even countries such as France lack adequate resources as they move to expand already active monitoring programs. Ben Cadron, a professor of technology sociology in Brussels, said that he expects there will be increased resources devoted to technology, such as CCTV cameras and surveillance software. Now, let's put all this together with the previous false flag operations and a scripted chain of reactions. Let's go back to 9/11, the mother of all Operation Gladio synthetic terror plots, and see how it gave rise to the expanded and dangerous intelligence industrial complex. I'm going to read from an article published in 2011, 5 years ago, by The Guardian. Those cashing in on the international war on terror pale beside the security boom that is taking place in the US itself. Across America, new organizations sprang up in the wake of 9/11 as the flow of money was turned on. 9 days after the tragedy, Congress committed $40 billion to fortify America's domestic anti-terror defenses. In 2002, that figure was a further $36.5 billion. In 2003, it was $44 billion. More than 260 new government organizations have been created since 2001. The biggest of all is the Department of Homeland Security, whose workforce is 230,000 strong and awaiting new headquarters in Washington, which will be the biggest new federal building since the Pentagon. Since 2003, the DHS has distributed more than $30 billion to state and local governments to spend on security and counterterrorism. There are now 1,271 government organizations and 1,931 private firms related to counterterrorism, intelligence, and homeland security in some 10,000 locations around the United States. In the Washington, D.C. area alone, they have built enough new office space to add up to 3 Pentagons. A startling 854,000 Americans now hold top secret security clearances, around 250,000 of them in the private sector. And these numbers are much bigger, much larger today. This report is 5 years old. The numbers have been going up. You know how everyone is talking about Belgium EU having to up their game in intelligence measures? The scanners and cameras they need to purchase? The new joint intelligence and surveillance complex for the entire EU? Well, this is what they are talking about. What was made possible in the US by the synthetic terror event on September 11, 2001. That's the model they are after. Look, airport scanners are a big business that has sprung up since 9/11. Tech firm L3 has won nearly $900 million in business from the TSA. L3's full-body scanners, which cost around $200,000 each, are being rolled out across the U.S., boosted by the unsuccessful terror attack in 2009 by a would-be plane bomber who put a device in his underwear. Yet, a report by the Government Accountability Office found that it was unclear if scanners could have detected that bomb. If you think much of the trillions going to your government, you're mistaken. Let's see who gets the real big chunks. 70% of the intelligence community's budget flows to private firms. Since 9/11, the nation has spent close to $1 trillion on intelligence, meaning about $700 billion has gone to contractors like SAIC, Blackwater, Booz Allen Hamilton. The outsourcing of government intelligence work to private contractors took off after 9/11. Spying became one of the fastest growing private industries in the United States. The trend is part of an increasing government reliance on private contractors. In March 2007, the United States government publicly revealed for the first time that it spent 70% plus of its intelligence budget on private contracts, mercenaries included, folks. That's right. Imagine what this level of expenditure would do to the bankrupt and unemployed EU. Actually, you don't have to imagine. Allow me to illustrate. Here is another parallel Operation Gladio synthetic terror event. We are talking about the Paris terrorist attacks. And here's how it's been good for France's economy. Let's say certain people within the France economy. A large group of soldiers wearing bulletproof vests and wielding machine guns fanned out beneath the Eiffel Tower on a recent afternoon, scanning the crowd for potential terrorist threats. Across the country, nearly 10,000 more armed troops patrolled streets around landmarks, stores, and government buildings. France is spending nearly €1 million a day on the heightened security, part of a renewed surge in European military spending as governments declare terrorism a permanent risk, perpetual terrorism. Europe's current approach to fighting terrorism after 2 deadly assaults carried out by Islamic militants in Paris last year represents the shift from the austerity mantra that has dominated the region since the debt crisis in 2010. Ain't that right? As far as the powers go, terrorism is good for business. Not ours, but theirs. Wars and chaos are good for certain business, not mine or yours. In the days after the Paris attacks, Securitas, a leading provider of security agents in Europe, was swamped with calls from department stores, museums, and other outlets scrambling to hire thousands of guards and intensify screening. Securitas, which already had 16,000 agents in France, could provide only 800 more and has since accelerated hiring to meet demand. At Visium, a French maker of metal detectors, orders have jumped 4-fold since the Paris attacks, especially from sports stadiums, concert halls, and large stores. French companies are expected to spend €500 million more this year alone for agents, while security firms and police departments will increase orders for everything from bulletproof vests to drones, said Patrick Haas of one of the largest private French security firms. The spending has the potential to provide a much-needed stimulus boost to a region that has struggled for years to kickstart growth. We all know war is a racket, but so is the intelligence, aka surveillance police complexes. We need perpetual wars to feed the racket and sustain and expand our military-industrial complex. For perpetual war, terrorism or perceived threat of terrorism is needed. If there is none, one would be synthetically and readily created. Same with the intelligence industrial complex, the lifeline of which is terrorism, chaos, and fear-mongering. If there is none, why not invent and execute one? All we have to do, look at the chain of events following a synthetically created terror action. And with that, we'll see the needed juice that expands our wars and expands our police and surveillance practices. The existence and expansion of the military and intelligence industrial complexes depend on terrorism. And what wouldn't they do to ensure that we have plenty of that? This is Sibel Edmonds. I'll be back with more soon.